Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our new Discord, $2.99 per month. You can interact with each other, interact with us. We're doing more and more stuff there. So if you follow us on Twitter, X, whatever it is you want to call it, you might want to move to Discord because all the behind the scenes content, it is going there. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. You can find the link right here on the description of the podcast or on the YouTube channel and also at the top of the Five Reasons Sports Twitter feed. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, includes our friends over at Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. Get $20 to play. Also, you can participate in our tournaments. You can use that money to do so. So we got NFL tournaments every weekend. Make sure you join the one coming up for this weekend, and also NBA tournaments daily and monthly. So check it out, betteredge.com. Use the code 5RSN. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on the Five Reasons Sports. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. He's home. I'm on the road. We're in the same region for a change. And we want to make sure, before we get to today's floor plan, that you check out the episode that was done last night as we're speaking, which was the Miami Heat beating the Golden State Warriors on the road, doing so without Jimmy Butler, without Josh Richardson, without Caleb Martin, and without Kyle Lowry. So 4 rotation players, including 3 regular starters, and the Heat win in Golden State. They throttle Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, pretty much dominated the game. It was mostly the guys that we were talking about as possibilities to play, which was Jovic, Kane, and Hampton, who did a great job in that game. And then they got enough from Hero, Jaquez, and Bam to finish the deal. And so they are right now, as we get into today's floor plan, we're going to take a look at where they are entering the new year. So we're recording this on December 29th. The Heat are now 19-12. They have 4 more games left on this road trip. They have a winnable game in Utah coming up. They have had their core 3. I don't want to call them a big 3 yet because they don't play together enough to be a big 3. They've had their core 3 of Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler together for 7 games. And one of those 7 games, Tyler left early. So they've had their core 3 together for 6 games. Jimmy Butler's on pace to play 60 games, which is even less than we projected before the season started. And yet they're now firmly 4th in the East. They're ahead of the Knicks. They're ahead of Cleveland. They're ahead of Orlando. They're ahead of Brooklyn. Atlanta and Toronto are fading. Chicago is breaking things up. And it looks like basically a 4-team race in the Eastern Conference, which is kind of what we thought. And the Heat are below those teams, but I don't think any of those teams really want to see them. So, Greg, as we look at it, we're going to compare it to their records through 31 games and as they go forward. Are you satisfied with where they stand?
I think you have to be. I think that with all the context surrounding how many guys have been out, all of the injuries, I know Spoelstra recently in a presser glared at a couple people and talked about how Omer Yurtseven and a couple other guys took up all their injured minutes last year. That's not the case this year. The minutes are the guys that have been out have been legitimate, and the fact that they are basically neck and neck with Orlando in the 4 or 5 matchup, but we feel like they're creating separation just by virtue of how they played lately. They beat Orlando. They're kind of moving into that 4th range, and frankly, they're not so far from 3rd. And so that's where I think Heat fans wanted to be if everything went accordingly. I don't want to say if everything broke right, but kind of, because they're the best, if not second best 3-point shooting team in the league so far. I think that's something that we all thought had to happen, that 3-point shooting had to come back to life. And so for me, there's a couple statistics that we'll get into in a minute that I think are important to mention, that I think that by Shane Battier has drilled this in my head, and I think you're going to know where I head with that. But other than that, I think that they have met expectations, and Heat fans should feel pretty damn good about where they stand heading into the new year. And that's not me sunshine pumping. I mean, like, I think it's legit.
Well, here's where they are compared to the past 4 seasons. So we took a look at this. This is the Jimmy Butler era. First year they were 23. This is through 31 games. The first year they were 23-8. We know how that finished. It finished in the bubble after a long break. Now the 23-8 start was a little bit weird because then they had kind of a bad 3 weeks right before the COVID break, and the COVID break actually kind of gave them some time to pivot and also incorporate players that they'd added. Sorry, my daughter in the background. With the camera. And also incorporate some players that they added during that time, which was obviously Crowder, Iguodala, Solomon Hill, and they had guys going out, so they had to change kind of what they were doing. And they ended up again figuring things out in the bubble, and then they got the 5th seed because they didn't really care about the 4th, and ended up winning in the first round, and then obviously advancing all the way to the finals. Second year, 14 and 17. 14 and 17, and that was basically the extension, right? Like that was the last season didn't really end. They had
How could you be Mo Harkless?
Right, precisely. And then 18 and 13 the year after, which was the year they ended up finishing with the number 1 seed. And then last year, but after they went 18 and 13, they had a 23-8 run after that, which kind of, and that was after Bam got hurt. But Kyle Lowry did a lot of that. And then 16 and 15 last season, a season where they never really got right until 3 minutes left against Chicago in the second play-in game. So they are actually trending the second best of the 5 Jimmy Butler seasons.
Unbelievable.
And I make this argument, I have made this argument, and now I see as I'm polling it that most Heat fans have come around to my way of thinking on this, whereas they did not before. Because I can tell you when I polled it before the season at a training camp, when Eric Spoelstra said this is the deepest team we've had recently, 65% said no to that this team was not better than last year's team. And I said, yes, it is considerably better. And that's even
I was
without
skeptical.
You were skeptical. This is the one time where I was more optimistic than you. And I will say now 89% say this team is better than last year's team. So it's gone from 35% to 89% in terms of believing that. And I don't think there's any way to argue otherwise at this point. Like I don't whatever. And again, let's not take what Gabe has done in LA because it's unfair. He hasn't done anything because he's been hurt. He's kind of become Kendrick Nunn too for them out there. But Max and Gabe were not going to be providing more for you than Takis, right? Or this improved version of Kevin Love,
Duncan.
or some of the other upgrades that or again, and I didn't project this new Duncan Robinson alone is already gives you more. I think those 3 things give you more, and that doesn't add in improvements that other players, Tyler in particular, Bam to a certain degree, and others have made here along the way, and then whatever Josh has provided for you, and then Caleb being, again, once he's gotten healthier, returning more to what he was towards the end of last season as opposed to the beginning of last season. So I think they are better, and so I'll start here with number 1, and then we're going to go back and forth with things that we want to see in the new year. I want to see them take this as they go into the year. I want to see them take the regular season seriously, and by that I don't mean that they haven't taken it seriously at all because some of these injuries have been legitimate. But I think it is important that they drop no further than they are right now. Like I think that they need like this 4 spot is fine, okay,
Yep.
and they need to act like that or above is the goal. Because you do not want to be in a position you're still in the mix kind of. I know Cleveland's banged up, but you're still in the mix with the Knicks. Orlando's interesting. Okay, Indiana could get hot again. You don't want to be in a position where you drop and you have to fight your way out of a play-in spot in the last few weeks of the regular season, because that really should be the time to kind of get your rotation right. Make sure Jimmy gets the requisite rest. Kyle gets if he's still here, gets the requisite rest, etc. So my big thing is take it seriously enough, okay? And we've seen they can win with less. They did it again against Golden State, but it's about an attitude. And I think that Spoelstra has been, if you listen to Eric lately, Greg, he has mention frequently without provocation. We did it in response to my question, but I didn't ask him about seeding. Oh, I think we're in the 5 spot in the East. I think we're in the 4 spot in the East. Like, he's actually paying attention to it, like,
Mhm.
from a distance. He doesn't usually do that,
Never.
and I think that right? And I think that he's done it at least 3 times that I at press conferences I've been at recently, and I think that's intentional, because I think he wants
Yeah.
his team to understand it matters this year. They don't have to be the 1st seed, but don't be 7th.
You know what it kind of feels like? It kind of feels like there's been an acceptance of what parity really means for you in a regular season, and it means that all this matters that much more, and you actually have to hone in on seeding. And it may not mean that you necessarily need to finish, um, you know, in the top three, but you damn sure don't want to spend the entire playoffs without a home court series. Like, what are we doing there? Like, let's not make it harder on ourselves. And so I think that the Heat, because of their defensive principles, I'm going to talk about those in a minute, though, and also just their overall like hustle, work ethic, culture. Y'all know the deal. They can just like scoop up regular season games when other teams are checked out. Like there used to be a time, Ethan, where we used to say Riley can coach anyone to 50 wins. Like this was like back the last time it was said was when Anthony Mason was on the team, and then the next year they didn't win 50, and then we didn't talk about 50 win teams by Riley every year. But up to that point, it felt like he could coach anyone to that. And part of that was that there were moments and pockets of the regular season that they just took more seriously than everybody else. I'm not saying they need to swing the pendulum that far back, but they need to. I'm with you there. I think that is an important part of this. And then the two things that I do want to add and sneak in here just from a metrics perspective is that right now they are 14th in offensive rating and they're 13th in defensive rating. They need to get up into the top 10 in defensive rating for sure. I'd love to see them in offensive in both, you know what I mean? And in net rating, they're 12th. But I'm saying defensive rating, let's get in the top 10. Stop playing around here. That's my big New Year's trend to watch.
Yeah, I think the defensive rating is more important than the offensive rating. We know the offensive rating is going to fluctuate a little bit in terms of their shooting. I mean, and we talk about the variance. I mean, we're gonna have our friend Matt Moore back on the podcast at some point, HP basketball, because he talked a lot about the shooting last year, and it was I again Matt's gonna get upset at me for quote unquote misquoting him, but this idea that it was fluky, that little run that they had in the playoffs. But what was really flukier was what happened in the regular season, honestly.
Correct.
If you look at the context of the last 3 years, and now they've returned to that level, and they've returned to that level without Strus and Vincent, which, again, if you watch Strus and Vincent shoot during the regular season last year, which most people who from national media did not do, you knew they actually dragged their 3-point percentage down during the regular season because of the volume and the inaccuracy that they would go through various stretches. Having more Duncan Robinson, having Duncan play at this level, and look, Hawkins is shooting a reasonable percentage from three, not on high volume. And some of their other guys have started to turn their. Kyle has been shooting when he shoots, has shot a very good percentage from three.
Jamal
John,
Cain.
yeah, and Josh has been okay, but I mean, all these guys. I mean, Haywood, went through a dip. We saw him make one last night. They are starting to, and Kevin Love has been better as the season has gone on. So all of that has kind of combined here. That their 3-point shooting has been good, which has helped their offensive rating. What's hurt their offensive rating, of course, is having bodies in and out. But now they have another guy who can create rim pressure in Jaquez, who's actually doing it better than anybody else on the team. And he's shooting over 50% from the floor. I mean, he's shooting 50, I think it's 52.5% which is ridiculous for a rookie. And then people are not getting him out of his spots. And again, Duncan's numbers have gone up. So I think the offense, as long as the shooting stays at a certain level, the offense will be okay. You're right about the defense. I mean, to me, it is I think at times it's because of the different coverages they're playing, because of guys that have been in and out. Some of it is it's a little skewed because that stretch that Bam was out, particularly when they're playing Indiana, a couple of those things that the numbers went off the charts. I do think they've settled in some. I think after the break, what I want to get into is this, because I think there's a key point from a rotational standpoint. And then to me, when we talk about things they need to figure out in the new year, it's more of a long-term thing. they need to figure out. So I want to get to that in a second. Before I do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's Water Cleanup of Florida. Go to WCUFL.com. It's WCUFL.com, based in Boca Raton. Michael Robert and their team, they're your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Get the preventative program with them, because we know that afterwards it's challenging with insurance companies to get all the money that you're supposed to get. Of course, they'll do the cleanup work for you them too, and they're extremely honest. So if they can't do it, they'll tell you. I've had a couple of different people come to me and tell me that, and many people come to me and say, no, they just did a great job. And so you just want to deal with honest people, particularly when you're dealing with contractors. Again, more than 70 5-star reviews on Google. Check them out at Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the guts.
All right, so let's get to this. I want to hit on one shorter term thing, and then we'll hit on the longer term thing. The shorter term thing is, honestly, I'm just gonna be flat out. Jimmy needs to play more. I think we're at that stage, and I know, I understand. We've been through it a million times. Okay, that it's about the playoffs for him. There's nothing left to prove in the regular season. He doesn't care about the 65 game minimum rule for awards, because he doesn't want any awards. Okay. I mean, literally, he's going to be the hardest Hall of Fame case to judge, because he should have 2 or 3 more All-Star appearances, more All-NBA appearances. If he just gave a damn, he doesn't. He's going to get in anyway, I think, eventually, just because of what he's done on the big stages. But he's not going to have some of the counting numbers that some of these other guys have, some of the awards that some of these other guys have. He doesn't care about it. And I think that endears him to Heat fans. But, I mean, look, he needs to play more than 60 total, in my view. They need to get a rhythm, okay? And they need to get a rhythm with their 3 best guys. And, look, Bam and Tyler have both been out. So this is not just a Jimmy thing. Like I said, it's 7 games that they've played together. But you've said this repeatedly, and it sounds crazy to people, but it's right. We're in year 5 of this. I still don't know if the 3 of them work together.
Yep.
Like,
Totally bizarre.
I mean, it's right. Like it's worked well enough to get to a couple finals and another
so it works.
conference finals. You're right. But like with Dwayne, LeBron, and Chris, like you could see the progress. Yes, Dwayne missed time during that stage, but LeBron and Chris were healthy during that period of time. So you kind of got an understanding, like it could work without Dwayne, because LeBron and Chris played so much together and all the rest of it. And they had a system for when Dwayne was out, whether it was, a Mike Miller or James Jones or whatever. This is still wonky. Like we talk about their numbers together. Like even when we talk about like the numbers with Hero and Robinson, there's no sample size with Jimmy with the 2 of them.
Yep.
None. Like
everything's so noisy. Everything's so noisy. Like if you look at this whole run, the finals against LA, no Bam, no Goran, noisy. Then you talk about like the bubble run, and then the bubble year after, where Brian Fonseca always says that was the outlier year, the year after the bubble. And I agree with him. So that's noisy. And then you talk about all the injuries where you've had different guys out, got Tyler out of a playoff run where they get to the finals. That gets noisy. It's just such a bizarre 5-year stretch. And so you'd have to say it works, but we don't know that it works as whole, as presently constructed and whole. That's the thing that I think is super interesting. And I'll just finish up and say this before we get out of here. This is the last thing I'm looking at for this new year. And it is, so it appears as if the Miami Heat are actually doing it. They're bridging these 2 timelines. They're bridging the younger players, and they've got contending aspirations and older players that can get that done in the playoffs, and Bam, Jimmy, etc. Right. So that's like super cool that right now it appears as if that they're balancing that. And we asked if they could balance that, and should they balance that was another question that we asked a lot this summer about going all in, etc. Right now it's working out. We'll see. One losing streak changes how everyone feels about this stuff. But I guess I'll ask, what does it really mean to do that? And how do you convert that to winning in the postseason, and not just make it be about, we bridged 2 timelines, so conceptually we did something that made a ton of sense and was a win. How do you go from making it a conceptual win to a tangible victory this year? That's something that I'm looking for in 2024 for the Heat.
No, it's a great way for us to end because it's one of the hardest things to do in the sport as an organization in terms of management. And it's instructive that we just saw them play the Warriors, okay? Because the Warriors tried this. Like I mean, they literally called it two timelines. Like they had a name for it. Okay. And it was it was Steph, Draymond, Clay, and then it was Kaminga, Wiseman, Moody, Looney's kind of in the middle, but Poole, okay, where they had this younger core of players. They got, and then Wiggins kind of again in the middle, right? They got one title out of it, kind of in a weird year. Okay. Like they got one title out of it. They made a run in the playoffs. Steph went nuclear, kind of like Dwayne went nuclear way back. Like, and they had the pieces around him to make it work. And so they extended the Steph championship timeline with these two timelines, right? But ultimately, the other timeline blew up. Like, uh, I mean, Kuminga's just getting time now. And now finally Kerr's playing the two young guys he's got this year, the two guys they drafted. Uh, but uh, but Poole's gone. Okay. Uh, Wiseman's gone. Right. I mean, they and essentially they've acknowledged it. Warriors fans have acknowledged that the whole and it's become that it was a bust to a certain degree. Again, they got the championship, so it's hard to argue. But again, the young guys, with the exception of Poole, didn't really play a role in that championship. And now
Conceptually, it's a
you're looking.
bust.
It's a bust because you're looking forward and you're like, okay, well, okay, now we had to re-sign Draymond, but we don't trust him. Clay's money is there, and you don't really want to pay him because he's not consistent
And he's
anymore,
unrestricted.
and he's unrestricted. And Steph, I don't think can carry anymore. Like I think he can still be elite in certain situations for sure, and he'll have a month where he's great, but I don't think he can carry for an entire season anymore. So they're in this kind of weird space. The Heat are in a better place because I think because they're young players, they have young veterans on the roster. Like Tyler and Bam are players who've improved and now they're 26, 23, but they're not part of a second timeline. Like they're literally they're square in the middle of it for the next
Mhm.
5, 6, 7 years. That's different than what Golden State had. And now you have Jaquez who you add to that. And so you've got a core that's 26, 23, 22, right? And as Jimmy ages out, you have other and then we see last night where okay, this is why you don't give up on Jovic. Maybe you give him up in a trade for an elite player if it comes to that, if he's got to be part of a package, but you don't give up on him completely because there is legitimate. I mean, this is not KZ Okpala. This is not some of their other like
Hell no.
there. No, there is talent there. The only question there is, okay, does his talent fit what they need right now? Like he needs the ball in his hands. We've talked about this so often, right? They did that in the Golden State game, and they were literally Brady touched on this in the post game pod and also on playback. They were literally running actions with him where he was the primary ball handler playing point guard. Like Brady's like, they don't even let Kyle play point guard anymore in a traditional sense. And they had Jovic and to a lesser degree Jaquez doing it, where he was starting the action, starting the pick and roll with the intention of him creating the play. That's not really what Kyle does anymore. Okay.
Mhm.
He's more playing off of other people once he gets the ball to the front court. So I just, there is a specific skill set that this kid has that is going to be very useful down the road. It just might not be consistently right now. But you look at that and you look at, okay, maybe they do have a player in Jamal Cain who could be a back into the rotation player. And look, one of the other things I want to see them look at the rest of this RJ Hampton's interesting to me.
RJ.
Like they have high upside guys there. Like RJ Hampton, I'm sorry for Drew Smith, right? I'm a terrible thing. But we talked about it before the season. Like RJ Hampton has higher upside than Drew Smith. Obviously he does.
Easily.
Okay, he was a higher prospect, and there's just more there. If they can fix his shot, they have something. And so I want to see more of okay, who can we talk about with this? It's not the two timelines. I think you hit on it right. We talked about bridge. It's a bridge timeline that they have, and how many others can they get on the bridge,
Mhm.
right? Like, is Haywood Highsmith on the bridge? Is Jamal Cain on the bridge? Is RJ Hampton on the bridge? Is Nikola Jovic on the bridge? And then, we obviously know that Hawkins is, right? So how many others can they get on the bridge and make it that it's not all about Jimmy? And yet I come back, Greg, we can finish here. I come back to what I said at the beginning of this segment. It's not all on Jimmy. But in the end, it's about Jimmy. And
Agree.
they have a closer here now. You don't know that Bam, Tyler, the others are going to become that. Hawkins. But I think he has to engage more once healthy enough with this regular season so that we know what it is going into the playoffs. So that once they get him to the finish line, there's a confidence level, not from the media, nobody cares about us, but from his teammates. Jimmy still has it when we need it. We're not going to rely on him, but he can get us over to the other side. Because they're going to start facing some teams where, well, can Tatum, can Giannis, can Embiid? Okay, well, Jimmy's got to be in that class with those guys, as he has been the past during his era, to be able to finish. Right now, I'm not 100% convinced. I don't think he's had a great regular season. I just haven't seen it enough. I want to see it a little more, and I think it would help if we see it a little bit more with Tyler and Bam. So that's where we're at. All right. Any closing thoughts?
I agree. And I just think that it's a situation where Heat fans, as we head into the new year, should feel pretty damn good because it was a rough summer. Like, let's all just acknowledge that it was a rough summer because of expectations, not because anything necessarily changed. And the Miami Heat have actually, I think, turned a fan base that started the season a little bit malcontent, Ethan, and they've turned them around and made everybody excited again, and so that should be applauded. That's I guess my final thought for the new year.
I'd say this, covering it, it's and just following it on social media and watching our numbers go up and all the rest of the stuff that's happened. People are engaged with this team right now. They were not for a period of time, but maybe it's all Jaime. A lot of it is Jaime. But that's a huge thing. I mean, to find a first round pick to contribute at this level on a consistent basis where people are excited to watch him play. And I want to see him play with their core three, with Duncan, because the one crazy thing about this team is it seems like they're better when one of their premium players is out, but that's not what you want once you get to the playoffs. So that's not
Yeah.
what you're hoping. Tyler gets hurt again, we'll go to the finals, or Bam gets hurt, we'll go to the finals, or Jimmy misses time. No, that's not. I mean, you want to see them whole finally, and they really haven't been that during the Jimmy era. So we'll see what happens. All right, for Greg, I'm Ethan. Check us out again on Off the Floor. Also, Better Edge. Use code 5RSN and go to Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.